Every day, we strive to do more and be the best versions of ourselves. It's not an easy task, but success is available for each of us. Welcome to the Swag University podcast, where each week we explore insightful messages, strategies, and tips to help you level up in life. Your host, Dr. Phildra Swagger, creative strategist and mindset coach, will empower you with the tools you need to create the life and business you desire, while providing inspirational insights to the woman who wants to see her destiny manifested daily. So now, let's level up with Dr. Swag.
It's your girl, Dr. Swag. I hope you're having a wonderful day. As always, I am. It's a pleasure to be here in the studio. I'm so excited because this episode today is sponsored by Swag University, our podcast and partner, Combined Expertise, which sponsors the Boss Chicks group coaching program. Now listen, ladies, if you haven't looked into Boss Chicks, please do. This is where I work with you in a small, intimate group of high-powered women. Yes, I said boss chicks. Well, we learn to explore who we are, align with our intentions, our goals to create the careers and the lives we want. We walk away as the CEO of our own lives. So check us out at combinedexpertise.com/bosschicks for more information. Now, I have a boss chick with me today, and she is bringing information that will absolutely be the game changer in your nonprofit organizations. I have Jennifer Filla. Jennifer is a veteran fundraiser with a focus on prospect research. She'll tell you what that is because I said research, prospect research. What is it all about? But Jennifer is here to share some insight on that. She's the president of Aspire Research Group, where she helps organizations find and connect with their best donor prospects. She is also CEO of the Prospect Research Institute, which trains fundraisers to conduct research on potential donors. She is the co-author of Prospect Research for Fundraisers, the Essential Handbook. And she also has served as a volunteer and trustee for many organizations. So today, guys, we have a gem. If you're a boss chick figuring out how to fund your boss dreams in your boss organization, I have a boss here for you. Hello, Jen.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's a pleasure. I introduced you, but there is so much more to you and your journey to becoming a prospect researcher. Will you tell my audience a little bit about what exactly a prospect researcher is and does, and who you are and how you became a prospect researcher?
I'd be happy to, because I love doing research. And I just feel that I'm the luckiest person to have fallen into a profession that I can have so much passion for. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I help nonprofit fundraisers, because now everything is data, right? It's so data driven. But if you're not a data person, and in fact, if you're focused on building relationships with people, you tend not to want to have to think about the data. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do. I help fundraisers figure out things like, who is the best prospect or prospects maybe for my campaign, or that I should focus on out of all these people in my database. Or now I have a few people and I know they're feeling like it's ready to ask them for a bigger gift, or maybe even a transformational gift for my nonprofit. How much should I ask for? And we can really dig in and look at somebody's giving history, how they've accumulated their wealth, what kind of motivations they might have, how they like to give, anything in the public space. So what other job do you look at how people accumulate their wealth and then how they want to give it away? It's a dream. It's just a lot of fun. So that's what we do in prospect research.
And how did you find your way to prospect research?
Yeah, so how did I get here? Well, I had my daughter when I was really young. I had just graduated high school and I had to get a job. Mm-hmm. So At that time, those were the classified ads in the newspaper.
Right.
So I just called every secretarial position until I got a job as a legal secretary. And who knew that that was the best training grounds for prospect research? Of course, like we get people from librarian backgrounds, all kinds of backgrounds come to prospect research. But as a legal secretary, while I was raising my daughter, I learned all about public records. I learned all about how companies are formed, how they're governed, what the different state laws are, about real estate, about Wall Street. In fact, I was working in the general counsel's office of an insurance company when the Securities and Exchange Commission first went digital with their filings.
Wow.
So I really had a love for all of that sort of the intellectual piece of the legal, like how does that all put together? When they say shell companies, what are they really talking about? What is dark money? All that kind of stuff. So that's how I fell into it. And once I graduated college at night as a legal secretary, I said, gosh, is this what I want to keep doing? Because you know how it is. Once you get that resume, HR says, oh, that's who you are. And I wasn't sure that that was who I was. So when I saw an ad for a nonprofit position running a program for fourth graders at a historical society, I jumped at it because it was going to be able to pay me what I needed to make to continue supporting my family. And I could try a whole new profession. And then here I am.
Oh, that's so powerful because you said a couple things there. One, ladies, if you missed it, she said you don't have to wear the label, the title that HR says you have to wear. You can go out and reinvent yourself and land in the career or the agency that you want to be in. So that's pretty powerful.
Well, those labels are tough to avoid because HR acts as the gatekeeper for so many things. And I understand what they need to do, and they get flooded with data, right? So how are they going to find me who doesn't look like what they're looking for? I can be fantastic, but they don't know it. And I tend not to get hired. In my career, I haven't been hired by HR. I've looked for the hiring managers. So I've networked there. And then they say things to me like, oh, I'll be interested to see if your resume crosses my desk from HR.
Nice.
So yeah, it can really, once you realize if the system isn't working for you, you got to find a workaround. And that has been super helpful for me.
Yeah, that's a networking you just introduced is a strategy that I think we have to talk about in the nonprofit space because it is so much more than cocktails and exchanging business cards. It's nurturing the relationship that they say, I'd like to see your resume come across my desk. What tips or how does that correlate to having a fundraising strategy for a nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it brings up a few things because I've been looking at networking and reading about it because it's become important, or I've become aware of its importance. Not the typical networking event we all think of. That's probably not really networking. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you an example of how I have been able to help a nonprofit organization, actually a historically Black university, think of networking in a different way in terms of major gift prospects. So, the big gifts aren't coming their way, or they are now, which is great, right?
Yes.
But development directors said to me, look, I'm at the top of my career and I want to make an impact. I want to find the major gifts. And we don't have the constituency. So if we look in our database, she wasn't seeing that they had the heavy hitters. Mm-hmm. And here I'm seeing other places get these multi-million-dollar gifts. I want it. Like, what can we do to get it? So what we did was we took one of those gifts that was splashed out in the news. This was early 2020. And I untangled it a little bit as best I could in the public realm, what was available in press releases, things like that. Like, how did that gift happen? Why did they give to those three places? Mm-hmm. Was there a relationship somewhere? And as it turned out, it was more about being in the right place at the right time. So there wasn't a direct relationship, but these other universities were participating in a space where this major donor was. And I even looked at like the board of directors. Okay, who are the non-traditional people on that board? And where did they graduate from? Like maybe that was it, right? Nope, Standard, Harvard, Stanford's, like all that stuff. I'm like, oh, what's happening? What we came up with as a strategy was, let's look at where the new president could aim to sit on the board. That's networking.
Yeah.
Be in the place where you are in the social and professional sphere of the people you wish to have make a gift. Well, that's, that can be intimidating. We ended up taking a look at who are similar folks and where do they sit on? What boards do they sit on? Mm-hmm. What boards could she direct her president to sit on to start that game of expanding who's in their sphere, so that when someone wants to make a big gift, they say, wait a minute, I know so-and-so. I've seen that name. Let's talk to them. That's fundraising strategy in a whole new way.
Right. And even though you offer it at the large university level, it applies to the small nonprofit as well. Looking at where are those connections that you want to make and how to get in that space. So that was a gift that you worked on in 2020. It challenges me to think about, how do you do it in the pandemic with us being so virtual now? How has the fundraising strategy changed to respond to this new world that we live in?
Early on in my career, I went to a presentation, and it was a guru in my field, and he's up there talking, and it's got the PowerPoint, which was, relatively new at the time. Mm-hmm. And he's like, everything's a cycle. Because I started my consulting in the Great Recession. I just didn't know that's what was happening. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness, right? I might have been scared away. But he's like, everything's a cycle. So, there's people on both sides. There's always people going up and there's always people going down. So when I think about this pandemic, I think, okay, there's always a downside, but what's the upside? And one of the big upsides in the pandemic has been that people were home. These globetrotters are hard to keep track of. Mm-hmm. And even in Florida, where I am, we have a lot of people who are only here part of the year. This is their vacation place in the winter. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes the nonprofits here in Florida have thought, well, then they're gone. When they're gone from Florida, I can't talk to them. Now we know that's not true. Now everyone has had experience on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And when they were home, really locked down in pandemic, they picked up the telephone. Mm-hmm. That's powerful. So I just encourage people not to be limited by the downsides. Just let's look at what's on the flip side, and let's look at our strengths. Mm-hmm. What can we do more of? So even in pandemic, people need board members. People need volunteers to do things. Once you know where your space is, you can do that research. Like, where do I want us to be positioned? Is there the housing board impacts my mission, or who impacts my mission? What are those spaces looking like? Where are the funders? How could I participate? And then you have to start. And that's, I think, the most difficult.
Actually getting started.
For me as a researcher, like that first connection, I like to do things on LinkedIn. People will connect with me there. Then I can keep track of the person and congratulate them appropriately and, stuff like that. That's my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Others have better ways of building relationships like that a little faster, probably. That's not my skill set, but I can help you find out, well, where's the sphere of influence, and where are the funders that impact your mission, that kind of stuff.
So first step is really getting clear. Really sounds as if fundraising aligns with the mission. And sometimes organizations, nonprofits are doing work, yes, under an umbrella of a mission, But how important is it to really drill down to know, I guess, who the prospect is, or how can a nonprofit who hasn't used a prospect researcher ready themselves so that they can take advantage of getting the best analytics for their fundraising strategy?
Ooh, good question. Because now we hear all in the news and stuff about artificial intelligence, big data. Mm-hmm. And I think smaller nonprofits are feeling left out of that. Mm-hmm. And that's a mistake. So good data can happen to anyone, but it doesn't usually. Mm-hmm. A lot of times what we're doing is we are just trying to get everything done. And that means the gift entry is just done by whoever. And records are getting created however. Information is going in multiple different fields, the same kind of information. So really the best thing to do is get started, especially if your database is small. And by small, if you only have 1,000 records, you are in a great place to create some process for entering records that even if you have to rely on volunteers, at least now you have a documented process that people can follow. And looking for ways to do some easy maintenance. What report are we supposed to print out that will show us duplicates? Mm-hmm. Because I'll tell you, the bane of existence is when you have 100,000 records and 10,000 are duplicates, or 5,000, or even 1,000. Everything's chewable one bite at a time, but your data clean is just so, so important. And it's where most people balk at spending money. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate because then what happens is once you have this nice bulging database full of donors because you've done the good work of getting your message out in the community, if your bulging database is a disaster, it's going to be really hard for me to figure out who is likely to have the ability to give, who has the affinity based on their giving history to you to really reach out to, who could probably step up a gift. They've been giving to you for 5 years and they really could give more if you made a phone call and found out what they're passionate about you. I can't help with those things if you don't have the data to know who your donors are. So that's the first piece, biggest piece, is the data.
The data. Are there tools that the small nonprofit or mid-sized nonprofit can use and not be afraid of investing in? I mean, is it still okay to have an Excel spreadsheet, or are there fundraising tools that say, hey, this is an entry place for you?
I'm totally blanking on the name of the nonprofit. There's a tech nonprofit that helps folks, and I will definitely send you that link.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure there's some donor databases, CRMs, customer relationship management databases, that you don't have to pay a cent for until you get a certain number of records. Mm. And there's also many low costs. There's so many that's why I want to send you that link for that nonprofit tech place, because you need some guidance on what's the difference, right. What's going to be good for us. But there's really no reason to have a spreadsheet unless you have, 50, right? Because at 50, you can take the time and figure out a good database and wait. But any more than that, and you should get the habit and the practice, because something's happening. And I don't think people are noticing, but there's some big heavyweight tech companies in the fundraising space that have been around for a long time with their donor databases. And they have not had to innovate as much as the scrappy young companies coming up. And I've noticed some companies that offer a lot of analytics right inside the database, because of course you want to know those things. You want to know who your best donors are based on giving history. And those are some pretty simple calculations that your database should be able to do for you. So I think it's worthwhile to try out new databases and to read about them and have someone on staff who likes that, or on your board, or a volunteer, because it's coming up. There's some changes. We need to make that change with our feet or our fingers as we type. Let's choose the databases that are really giving us what we need, instead of costing a fortune, but you need a team of people to implement it, That's not helpful.
Yeah, and that's so important to right size your tools. I've in growing this business, my background has been in nonprofit, and now that I am more in the coaching and development space, of leadership development space, I've had people introduce tools to me that are great for what they do, but I'm not ready for, and it's like, okay, well, let's grow into this. And what comes up for me in this, Jen, is oftentimes agency heads will still ask me to be involved in writing grants or proposals and development. So you've given us a lot of insight on prospecting donors. Can you help us understand the journey or the difference between whether or not I should seek a grant funding, or pursue contracts with maybe the government, or actually look for a partner to donate? Can you explore that a little bit?
I think it is really important. I get people who come to me very early. Maybe they're a startup or they've been in operation with grants, and now they want to get those individual donors. And they call me up and say, okay, you're a researcher, go get me some donors. It's not really how it works. Mm-hmm. So how does it work? The best way is to step back and look at your strategy with someone who knows fundraising. So you get a fundraising consultant who does that kind of strategy, and they can say, okay, institutions like foundations, corporations often like the new thing. They like to seed something and start it. And that's great, because when you're a startup, that's exactly what you need. They're focused on reporting and impact. There's a more formal approach to them. While you're doing that, we would always hope that you reach out to your community and provide opportunity for them to give. So now we're already talking about a startup with two ways to give. Maybe it's only a donate now button on their website, but I feel strongly that you should always be encouraging the community to support your mission. Sometimes people have a trend to just start off at the top with, I only need 5 major gift donors and we'll be done. No, you don't. You need the community. And if you don't have community support, I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. So I feel pretty strongly, obviously, about that. So in the beginning, people often start without foundation funding. I say always have some method for getting individual funders. But once you look at that strategy, it's really about what kind of programs are we going to be operating to fulfill our mission? What is the best type of funder for that type of program? I may get government dollars because I'm working with the schools or I'm working in housing, but those government dollars are highly restrictive and they're volatile. I mean, the government could decide not to fund that based on a new administration. Hello, we've seen this real life recently. So individual dollars are extremely flexible. I can get a lot of unrestricted, do what you need for your mission dollars and have that flexibility. So you can get tremendous growth in your agency with government dollars and even startup or growth with foundation dollars, but you won't have the flexibility that you have with unrestricted individual gifts. And if you really want to transform, create just Scott or Mackenzie Scott might dump $40 million on you. Why would she do that? Because according to her blog posts, she sees that you've managed your money well. Even if you don't have the overall budget size, you have a vision that supports $40 million. Mm-hmm. And you have shown that you can administer those dollars through your programs. So that's how I would, it's not really a good answer for you.
It's a great answer.
But there you have it.
No, it's a great answer because sometimes we forget not to remember the small things, not to despise the small beginnings, because 1,000 raving fans giving you $100 a year is $100,000, and that will be a great seed for many nonprofits. starting out, small nonprofits and some mid-sized nonprofits that could, really provide a whole year of programming depending on what your mission is. So understanding that you have both ends, you want to have a community drive as well as asking. And I want to go back to that because you did say something there. Major gifts. How are major gifts defined? Is it 2 commas or 1 comma, or what is a major gift?
Oh, bless you for asking the question, because in fundraising, we do not have solid definitions of anything, and it can really cause some frustration. And I've seen a lot of, big nonprofits talk about major gifts in one way, and then the small nonprofit is like, I want to do best practices, and here's what they're doing. Well, but it's not the same thing. So in the major gifts evolution, I tend to think of it as the prospect management evolution. So we have small gifts, 25, 100, even if I get $1,000 and that's a major gift to me, these are one-time cash gifts, typically. They're not like 5-year pledges with some stock involved and, complicated asset gifts, right? Structured gifts. So when we're talking about a major gift, it's typically what is large for that organization. And you can examine your gift history and say, well, we've got a whole bunch of $10 donations, and then we have a $100 one or 2 or 3. That's our major gift, our actual major gift. What is our aspirational major gift? Because we want to have vision for the future. So you can define those 2 things for your organization based on your actual experienced gifts or campaign, which is usually what propels people to larger gifts. If I'm a donor and I'm viewing your organization and I'm thinking of a major gift in my donor mind, I'm going to be looking at what impact can I have on your organization. And if your total budget is $500,000, I'm probably not going to give you $1 million.
Right.
Because then I would be dominating your strategy, much like government funding does or foundation funding does. That's the danger. So a major gift is a large gift for your organization. But in our lingo in fundraising, major gift is often thought of as that big pledge, that big naming opportunity in a campaign, like those kinds of big gifts. Whereas in a smaller fundraising organization, it's typically still going to be a cash gift in 1 year. Like, I could ask you for $25,000 to support my organization this year, and you say yes. So big difference, right, in strategy of how do we steward and communicate. But same words, major gifts. So we need to kind of think about where we are and what it is for my organization.
Well, Jen, I know you've written your book, The Handbook, Prospect Research for Fundraisers. What tips will readers find there to start and move them down the line a little bit before they're able to contract with a prospect researcher?
So that was like way back in 2012, Helen Brown and I wrote that. And we really wanted to write something for fundraisers, not just the researchers. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, it's hard to believe it's that long ago now. It seems like yesterday. But sometimes we're finding, people who hadn't grown up in fundraising with research, but were now vice presidents. And now with information technology and, the push for data, the vice president was faced with, or, the head of an agency faced with, they tell me I'm supposed to use prospect research, but what the heck is that? Like, what does that look like in terms of work process for my fundraising operations? Mm-hmm. And that's what the book gives you. It says, here are the ways in which you use research techniques in the different areas. So analytics, prospect research, as in like profiling individuals, companies, foundations, and prospect management, which is that I have identified a few folks and we're going to give them one-on-one attention to move them towards a gift. Mm-hmm. Smaller nonprofits also struggle with that, like sticking with someone all the way to the gift, moving them all the way to the larger gift opportunity. So that's what the book does. It shows you what some of those techniques are. It gives you some concrete, practical examples that you could apply as soon as you read the book.
Oh, that is perfect, because even in the example you just gave, the nonprofit struggling to maintain that relationship, I've heard agencies have small events and say, we're friend raising, where they're kind of throwing out the net to see who's interested in to bring them into their pipeline. And so having a handbook that will help me understand what to do with this new prospect, this new relationship, this new friend to my organization, so that they stay invested. And as you say, at the end, or not at the end, because we love to have them be friends forever.
Round and around.
Round and around, but how to really nurture that relationship so that it does produce the donation that you seek. Jen, in closing, what are some of the pearls of wisdom or anything that maybe I haven't asked that you think in this COVID era or in the fundraising sector, nonprofits need to consider today?
I'm really hoping that the pandemic has taught us a lesson about fundraising that we should have already known, but we weren't practicing necessarily. So as we moved towards data, we have all this data. Jen can find me my best prospects. Mm-hmm. We've almost forgotten the most important part of fundraising is that personal connection to another individual. We're not selling them. We're listening to them. What is their need? What are their philanthropic goals? How do they want to connect? Why do they even give to us? Where else do they give? How does that make them feel? That one-on-one connection is so powerful. And we've had organizations who were, worried about not being able to run their events live, right? Mm-hmm. We have a client at Aspire where they were way over goal this year at their organization. They're a membership-based organization, and they could not, their arts, so they lost 80% of their revenue, right? Mm-hmm. They raised much more money than they had ever raised before with no events.
Wow.
Without a single event, not live or online.
Why do you think that is?
The focus was on calling people, checking in, how are you doing? Because you're our good donor and we care about you, and this is a scary time. It was about reaching out to people thoughtfully, like, let's do a little research on these folks before we start calling. And it yielded great results. And it was a game changer for this organization because it was the first time that fundraised dollars exceeded earned revenue.
Wow.
You can think of like a YMCA. They have a ton of earned revenue. It often dwarfs the fundraising. Mm-hmm. But now they're realizing, gosh, this is really important because we can't always count on earned revenue. So, if we start focusing on the importance of actually talking to people on the phone, don't send a letter, email's probably okay, but, really connecting with folks, even small groups on Zoom, connecting them directly with program staff. I've seen people doing things like that. Mm-hmm. Of course, as a donor, I'm going to love it and give more because why do you think I give? I love the programs. I love what you're doing, the impact you're having. So I'm really hoping that out of this scary time and damaging to so many incomes, personally and professionally, that we recognize the importance of real, authentic relationships.
Real, authentic relationships. Valuable tip, ladies. And as you know, we're building communities through our nonprofits. So reach out, be in touch. Jen, how can the Swag University audience stay in touch with you and find the resources that you have?
On the aspireresearchgroup.com website, I offer free publications. So we do things like we summarize all of the different research studies that come out about philanthropy and wealth so that you don't have to read through that really dry material. That's what we like to do. And we also have a blog. So you can absolutely find those free resources on the website, aspireresearchgroup.com, because we're aspiring for better things.
Yes.
And happy to have people subscribe and enjoy those free materials.
Fantastic. Well, guys, you heard it here. She's a boss chick, and every time we have a conversation, I learn something new. So I hope that you took notes, because this is how we grow our communities, through nonprofit research that allows us to find the right prospects, the right connections to forward your mission. And to forward your mission forwards your community. Building your community strengthens each one of us. So thank you so much, Jen, for being here, for sharing your knowledge, and really feeding the Swag University audience today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. So, guys, as you know, it's your girl, Dr. Swag. As always, stay blessed to be a blessing. Thanks for listening.
Glad you joined our conversation. For more Swag University episodes, subscribe on iTunes and help us level up by leaving a 5-star review. For more information and free resources, visit our website at swaguniversity.com with 2 G's. That's SWAGG University.com. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep the conversation going. Until next time, we hope this episode has inspired you to manifest your destiny and level up today.